Section 1 to 4, we're talking about slope and distances. This should be a review from a lot of your previous classes in math, but that's all right. The distance formula, what we have, we have the distance equals the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And remember that these subscript letters here, numbers, are points from an ordered pair. So like maybe I have the point 1, 2 and the point 3, 4. All right. When it says a 2, it's the second point. When it has a 1 subscript, it's the first point. So the x value of the 2 would come here. The y value of the 2 would go there. X value of the 1, y value of the 1, and so forth. And all we have to do is plug in numbers and figure out and solve for the distance. So a couple examples here. I'm going to do A. I'll let you do B on your notes yourself. All right, so when we're talking about the distance between these two, we're going to say distance equals the square root. We said x, maybe I'll just label them 2 and 1, make it simpler for you. Negative 2 minus 4 squared plus 3 minus a negative 5 squared, cross line, change of sign. Negative 2 minus 4, cross line, change of sign, is a negative 6 squared plus 8 squared, and the square root of that. Negative 6 squared is 36, plus 8 squared is 64. Continue to work inside the radical. I have 36 plus 64, which is 100. And the square root of 100 is plus or minus 10, but when we're talking about distances, you're never going to have a negative distance. You can have that negative sign tells you direction. So the best one I like to describe is like a punt in football. Somebody punts the ball, and there's a strong wind, and it actually takes it behind where he was supposed to punt it. That went a negative 10 yards. Well, it went a distance of 10. The distance isn't negative, but the direction is negative. So when you're talking about distance, we're never going to have a negative distance. We'll have a negative direction, but we'll always have a distance. All right, and then you can do B in your notes. Slope formula. We've talked about slope already in our algebra review. Slope formula was y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Slope is just rise over run. So therefore, we're going to have our y's on top and our x's on bottom. So a little problem here, a little story problem. So the relationship between the time x in hours a driver drives and the distance y in miles. So your x values is your hours, your y values are your miles. The driver travels is shown in the table below. And actually, I didn't make a table, I just wrote it out for you. Find the rate of change of the distance with respect to time. A driver drives 9 hours and 594 miles. So we said our x value is 9 hours, 594 miles, or y value is 594. On day 1, and 13 hours and 858 miles on day 2. They want to say find the rate of change, and when we're talking about slope, we're finding the average rate of change. So we want to figure out how many miles he went compared to how many hours. So let's go ahead. Our slope formula was y2 minus y1, so 858 minus 594 divided by x2, 13 minus 9. The bottom is going to be 4. The top is 858 minus 594. The top's going to be 264. And if we divided that, we're going to get 66. So our average rate of change is 66 miles per hour. All right. And why it's miles per hour? Because miles are on top, hours on the bottom, and how you say division in math is per, miles per hour. Okay. Example 3, find the slope of a line that goes through those 2 points. All right, fair enough. We know that it's, like this point 1, point 2. We're going to go our y's over our y's over our x's. So negative 3 minus 5 divided by 4 minus 4. Negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8. 4 minus 4 is 0. Well, we can't ever divide by 0, so therefore this has a slope that we call undefined. You can't divide by 0. It's an undefined slope. How that slope looks is if you think about it as rise over run, it's going to go down 8 over 0. So if I pick any random point, actually, let's go for a point that we have on a graph, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We pick that point, and we're going to go down 8 over 0. So what kind of line is that going to be? Well, it's going to be a vertical line, straight up and down. All right. Let's do B here. Find the slope of the line that goes through the points negative 2, 5, and 4, 5. So again, we can label our points 1, 2, y2 minus y1, 5 minus 5 divided by my x2 minus my x1, 4 minus a negative 2, cross line change sign, cross line change sign. 0 divided by 6. We can divide 0 by anything. 0 divided by 6 is just 0. And in fact, if you type that in your calculator, you get 0. In the above one, if you typed in negative 8 divided by 0, you would get an error saying that you can't divide by 0. All right, and then if you think about what kind of line this is, let's just pick one line that we have. Let's go negative 2, 5, negative 1, 2, up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you think about rise over run, what kind of line this is, we're going to go up 0, but we're going to go to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So when we have a slope of 0, it's going to be a horizontal line. All right. The midpoint formula. Midpoint formula is the middle of both points. So how do we find the middle of two numbers? We add those two numbers up, we divide by 2. All right, it's the average of those two. So x1 plus x2, or it could be x2 plus x1. When you're adding, it doesn't really matter. Divided by y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Okay? So find the midpoint of the segment that has endpoints here at 5, 8, and 2, 6. So we're going to add our x's, 5 plus 2 divided by 2, and we're going to get an ordered pair because it's a midpoint. It's a point. We're going to get a point. So 5 plus 2 and 8 plus 6 divided by 2. Well, 5 plus 2 is 7 divided by 2 is just 7 halves, or 3.5. 8 plus 6 is 14 divided by 2 is 7. So our midpoint between those two lines, or between those 2 points, is the point x equal to 7 halves and y equal to 7. Find the midpoint of the segment has endpoints 3, negative 1, and 9, negative 17. So my x1, 3, plus my x2, which is 9, divided by 2. My y1, which is negative 1, plus my y2, which is 9, divided by 2. 3 plus 9 is 12, divided by 2 is 6. Negative 1 plus 9 is 8, divided by 2 is 4. So the midpoint between those 2 points is 6, 4. That's all I have for you. I hope this helps. We'll see you in class.